Hi, I'm Jen Merkling from jenmerkling.com, and I'm so excited to have you here with me today. We're going to talk all about teaching math with manipulatives for those kiddos who are in grades K through 3. I love using manipulatives to teach math, and this is such a fun age to teach math. It's very hands-on, kids are excited, there's just so much fun activities that we can do with them where it feels almost more like we're playing games than having to do worksheets. We can make it really fun for our kids and make it fun for us too, so that we're enjoying teaching math and they are building a great foundation where they're going to love math and have fun with you and get that foundation going so that they can continue with really positive feelings about math as they continue through school. So we're going to talk mostly today about teaching with manipulatives. I've used these manipulatives for years. I used them back when I was a classroom teacher. I taught second grade for several years, and I have been a virtual school teacher, and so I know the virtual school would send these out to families, and I would kind of help people learn how to use those in their own homes. And then with my own kiddos, I have 6 kids altogether. My 3 teenagers, when they were young, we used them, and I have a kindergarten son right now who is currently using these. Some of these materials I've actually had since I was a classroom teacher, so they're really getting up there in age, but they've been well worth the investment and have been well loved in my home and in our homeschool. Let's dive into how these will be used with your family and how you can use these to teach math with your kiddo. The first thing I want to talk about today is Unifix cubes. Unifix cubes are great because they can be used in so many different ways. I have a bag. Little kids, my preschoolers, actually sort all the colors out. They like to build different towers. We talk about, well, which one is taller, which one is shorter. You can use longer. All those early math vocabulary, you can introduce all of that with Unifix cubes. So they're great for beginning measuring too. In kindergarten, we start talking about not necessarily measuring with rulers, but just getting that idea of that we measure things with a unit. And so a Unifix cube is a nice unit to use. And so I might say, okay, let's get out our Spider-Man guy and let's see how tall he is. Use Unifix cubes to introduce measurement. Use them for patterns. That's one of my favorite things to do with them, and one of the first things I do with them, actually, even starting in the preschool level. So I might say, let's just make with 2 colors, and they pick whichever 2 colors they want. Let's make a pattern. So that might be called like an A-B pattern. So they get really good at making those, and then you can expand that to be, let's add 3 colors, or let's make it an A-B-B pattern. So it might be red, green, green. And so kids get lots of practice building patterns with the Unifix cubes. Also great for comparing numbers. So obviously you could build a tower. You could say, okay, I want you to build a tower that's 6. So this one is 6. And I might say, okay, let's then build a tower that is 8. Let's see if I've got 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So let's see which one is bigger, which one is more. And it's just so visual for the kids. It's not just you saying that 8 is bigger than 6. They can actually visually see it. And so I love Unifix cubes for that. They're great when you're learning greater than and less than, to actually have those and to put the symbol kind of between the two, and kids can really visualize that. So they're also great. I love using them for building numbers. So if you're talking about, let's say, the number 8, obviously you could just say 8 plus no other color. 8 plus 0 is 8. But you could also build it in obviously lots of different ways. So we could take, let's see, so this was 6. So we've got 6 blue. How else could we make 8? So you have it this way, and then your little kiddo is going to say, oh, well, let's see here. Let's use yellow to finish it. And they discover that 6 plus 2 makes 8. So they have a visual representation and they physically use the blocks to build the number. Is there another way to make 8? So then they're going to look at that and they're going to say, okay, well, how else can I do it? Well, what if I did 4? And so they'll have 4 of a color, and then hopefully they figure out 4 of another color, and all of these, oh, look, they're totally equal. They all equal 8. And you can go on and on that way, building the number, showing that we can make 8 in many different ways, or whatever number it is that you guys are working on. So that's one of the first things I do, just to build number sense. But then you can also take that information when you're teaching math facts and you'll be building, okay, I want you to build me the number 8 with 4 and 4, and they can see, oh, 4 and 4 makes 8. So that's a great way for kids as they're beginning to learn their number facts. So in addition to Unifix cubes, another one of the very first math manipulatives I use are teddy bear counters. And for some reason, kids just love these teddy bear counters. Mine get loved. They get taken all over the place, so watch out. Keep your teddy bear counters nearby or they're going to end up with playing with Lego and Barbie. But kids really do like these. They're great for patterns again, and just another fun way to build patterns. Let's use 2 different colored bears to make patterns. Let's use 3 different colored bears to make a pattern. So obviously a great first introduction to patterns. They're probably my favorite to use for story problems. Sometimes I will think it would be fun to say, hey, go get your Star Wars guys and let's make up some story problems. But what tends to happen is that my kiddos get too involved in their toys and we have more Star Wars going on than math. So for whatever reason, the teddy bear counters are still very engaging. We can make up fun stories. We can say that there were 2 bears and then, oh, their friends are getting on the school bus with them and now there's 4 bears. How many bears are on the bus? So you can make up fun stories. The kids are engaged in it. They have something hands-on. They're visually seeing the story. They're getting to act it out, but they're not overly stimulated by something that's maybe a little more personal like their toys. So I do like teddy bear counters. They're really great for using for story problems. And obviously my preschoolers, the girls just love to sort out the colors and make a little pile of all the green bears, all of the purple bears. They're great for sorting for those really, really young learners. Really great for graphing. So if you're just lining up your bears, so I might just throw some bears on the table and we could begin making a very early graph. So let's make a line with all of the purple bears. Okay, and then we've got our green bears. So which color of bear is the least? Oh, the red. There's only one red. Is there a color with the most? And they would say, oh, no, actually, purple and green both have 4, so they're equal. So they both together have the most. Then you could even talk about, if you can get into ordinal, what would be the next biggest? Like what's the 3rd place or the 4th place? So you can get into all of that and build those very early graphing skills. I also like to do this sort of thing even when my kids open up like a fruit snack or something. They have just gotten so into the habit of laying out the different colors or different characters and making a little early graph. So this is a fun early graphing activity you can do too using teddy bear counters. So we have our Unifix cubes and our teddy bear counters. Like I said, they're great for building patterns, early graphing, even story problems, or learning those math facts just in a very concrete way. So as you are then teaching the symbols for the math facts, I like to play games to do that. So I tend to make flashcards, not just to drill and practice, not where we're just doing 8 + 8 = 16, but where we're going to make a memory game. That's one of my kindergarten son's most favorite things to do in math. So I might just pick a few math facts, like a little math family, say the doubles facts. That's been really popular for us this year. So I would put the problem on one card, put the answer on another card, and I have all the doubles facts. I lay them all out just like we're playing memory. And so to get a match, he just has to find the problem and then its answer. And that's been a great way for him this year in kindergarten, learning math facts. And I think you can do that obviously all the way through 3rd grade and gets more complex. And as you see that your child is struggling with a certain set of math facts, maybe you just focus on those for the memory game instead of making it this giant memory game with every single math fact. So I just really encourage you to think a little bit outside of the box, use games as a way to really engage your children so that they can learn those math facts in a fun way. The thing you can do is pick a game that they really enjoy playing and use the math fact cards as a way that they can or incorporate the math fact cards into their turn. So before they take their turn, they have to do 5 math facts. It's not a super fun way to have to go through your math facts, but they're really engaged in the game that they already have, the board game that they like to play. So it's just incorporating it pretty seamlessly into a game that you have that you know your child's going to be excited about playing. So that's just another way to sneak those math facts in there. So the next thing I want to talk to you about is pattern blocks, which are so fun. Your kids are just going to think that we're playing, and they're not going to see that there's actually some really important math going on in the middle of the pattern blocks. Now you can buy pattern blocks, magnetic pattern blocks, you can get them wooden. I always have had the really just heavy duty plastic pattern blocks. So they come in different shapes. They've got diamonds, there's a square, there's a little bit of a thinner diamond rhombus type shape. Then you have triangles are in here somewhere. We've got our hexagon. And so what kids do, well, obviously they can just explore. You can just say, build me a really cool design and pattern with these blocks, which is really fun. They enjoy getting out the pattern blocks and just making their own design. My preschoolers enjoy just sorting them out by color. So again, you can use them with very young children. But you can also find really fun puzzles. This book I have is not in print anymore, I don't believe, but it's got puzzles all the way through 6th grade. And so it starts out pretty easy, and this goes for just about any product you buy for these online, where it actually is showing the kiddos what shapes would fill in the puzzle. And then it gets progressively more difficult where they have this blank page where they're trying to fill it in. And these are so good because it's building that spatial reasoning in our kiddos. They're able to start seeing how shapes fit together and have that spatial reasoning that is sometimes hard to get if they're not doing something hands-on. It's actually one of the things I remember not being particularly good at when I was a kid, but I just have always been drawn to these kind of problem-solving things. And I think kids just think, oh, it's fun, I'm gonna figure this out, it's like a puzzle. So good for so many reasons, and you can use them with your little ones for colors and all the way up to just pretty high-level problem-solving with your older kiddos. So pattern blocks are a great thing to have on hand, and they're so nice too. Like if you're not feeling well, this is a great thing to get out and say, okay, mommy isn't feeling super great today, how about let's get out the pattern blocks, and everyone's happy and you're doing math, and it's simple on mom too. So let's talk about Geoboards. My kids love Geoboards. When I taught school, kids love Geoboards. My own children love Geoboards. They're just a lot of fun. Something about the rubber bands and the board kids love. So Geoboards are so great. You can test your kiddos, make sure that they understand. If you've been studying shapes, you can say, okay, I want you to build me a triangle, and let's see, do they really understand how to build a triangle? Can they understand that, you know, we need to build something that has 3 sides? And so they have a lot of fun. These have really been stretched out, these rubber bands, and you can get rubber bands that are different colors. That even adds a little bit more fun to it. You can use each rubber band even as a side too, if you want something really large. So you could make these stretch, and this could just be one side depending on how many rubber bands you have, and you could build your shape. Each side could be with 1 rubber band. I like to make it also an open-ended problem-solving thing. Can you build me a shape with 5 sides? Okay, can you build me a shape where 2 sides are the same length? So you kind of keep giving them challenges that are open-ended, and they're making a design, and kids just get really engaged and excited about using Geoboards. I highly encourage you to add these into your homeschool with your primary aged kids. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the Judy Clock. I've had this Judy Clock since I was a teacher, so that was a long time ago. We're talking about 20 years of this Judy Clock has been around. I remember loving my 2nd grade teacher's Judy Clock. They sell small ones that are plastic that you can get individually. I really like having a big one. I think the reason I love the big one is you can see the gears, so it starts to really make sense to the kiddos why we have an hour hand, why we have the minute hand, and how they work together. They can see that as the hour is going, oh, well, the hour hand moved to the next hour. There's just something really visual and concrete about the large Judy Clock. I just love it. I like also that every single minute is niched off all around, all 60 minutes. So you can easily explain that the 1 stands for 5, which they have the 5 up here. But you can easily explain because they can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes have passed. So there's just something really concrete and hands-on about a Judy Clock that makes teaching time really simple. I love it. And obviously when you're starting with like a kindergartner or a preschooler, you're just going to be having them do your hours. Okay, this is 6 o'clock. And it progressively gets a little bit more challenging as you work with your second and third grade students. And you can say, okay, I've built a time, you tell me what it is. So go back and forth. Take turns where you're showing your child a time and they have to physically tell you the time, read it, and also give them an opportunity, if you tell them the time, that they can build it. Sometimes a child may be a little bit stronger at one or the other. And so this is a good way to make sure that they can do both. And I like to incorporate this actually in the morning time when you're doing your calendar. You can just kind of throw out a couple of time questions and they can just do this for fun as a little warm up for math or for your day during a morning time. So we talked about how I like to use my Judy Clock during calendar time. And so this is a little peek at my calendar. We use this pretty much every day. I like to use it to start math time. My curriculum comes with a little calendar, but I find using a larger one to be a little more engaging. My kids just really like moving the yesterday, today, and tomorrow around. We can talk about the special days. We can count. It's a nice way for us to go through the days of the week, months, weather. All of those things can get hit on a calendar. I think that you should keep doing calendar time, even though maybe it seems so simple to us and maybe, oh, well, that's a kindergarten level skill. I used it in my classroom daily with my second graders, and I think it's still appropriate to be doing that with your third graders because calendars are very abstract concepts. The weeks, the months, and so maybe a kindergartner can recite all of those things by the end of the year. They're got it all memorized, but do they really understand how the days, the months, the weeks, how that all really fits together? It takes a while to get that to really sink in. So I don't think there's anything wrong with using a calendar and having some calendar time up through the third grade. And then it's great to transition as your children mature to having a calendar maybe that they're keeping for themselves. It's a great way to start building that bridge to independence where they have their own calendar. They're writing down the activities that they're doing that week. You can even start when they get a little older, writing their assignments for the day in a calendar. So a calendar is probably going to be part of your homeschool for the duration, but I really enjoy using a big one for my little kids. I also would tell you that Starfall is a really fun place. I don't go to it every day, but when I do get on Starfall and go to their calendar, my son loves it. It's a fun little engaging way to do a daily calendar activity that's maybe different than what you're doing on a regular basis, just to mix things up a little bit. I also have a very small magnetic Melissa and Doug calendar, and my kiddos really enjoy using that too. Doug calendar has lots of holidays. It has your months. It's just how I feel, our special activities for the day. There's something really fun and engaging about the Melissa and Doug calendar too. So we actually use both of these every day. There's something really tactile, I think, about moving the magnets around that kids enjoy. So that's another option for you too. Okay, so next I want to talk about my hundreds chart. And this is something I probably use almost more than any of my other manipulatives. It's super inexpensive. You can find these for free online. This one is a laminated one that I've actually had for probably almost 20 years, but it does the job. So if you don't get it laminated, you could always cut one out and glue it onto a file folder. I think I love file folders as far as using something sturdy when I don't feel like laminating, just whether I'm making flashcards or something larger like hundreds chart. So obviously this is great for learning to count to 100. I love it also because it helps kids start to visualize the pattern in numbers. And I also, side note, love to talk about patterns with my kids, and I incorporate that as something that is helping them to be a better reader. So when we're doing patterns in math, I tell them, wow, you are great at patterns, and that's awesome. It's not only great for math, but there's a lot of patterns in reading. So I love to use that language and help kids just think about that there's patterns not only in math, but there's patterns when they're reading. So I love it when they see, oh wow, this whole column has 8s. And I'm like, yes, you're right, that is right. Every single number here is an 8. And so the more they use this, the more they start seeing the patterns. It's great for learning. Sometimes you can have these just printed off and you could have them color in the different numbers if you don't want to just have one that's laminated that you're using all the time. You can use one that you're going to just throw away too. I like for counting by tens is probably the first type of counting where we're skip counting, and it's really easy to do obviously when you're using a hundreds chart. I personally love using clear chips. I like them because obviously you can still see the number right on through. So if he is marking all of the numbers that we're counting by 10, you're using clear chips, your kiddos can still see the number that they are counting. So I love using them, and kids, they just something about little things like this. They think they're fun, they're engaged. It's just another tactile way to work on math. So what I really loved doing, obviously counting by tens, we can make our whole row of tens. Counting by fives, that was our next thing. We just finished doing evens and odds. And what I really loved doing with the evens and odds and counting by twos, we just picked two colors, and it's amazing. After about probably 3 days of working on what is an even, what is an odd number. So we did the little 2, 4, 6, 8. Who do we appreciate? Evens. Actually, I think I added the number 0 to the beginning of it. So 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. Who do we appreciate? Evens. And we did that, and we talked about, well, that's an even number. We did where we would take our chips, and so there was the two of us, so we would say, can this number be shared evenly between you and I? So I would say, okay, well, the number 2, here's 2. So can you have one and I have one? Oh, that's even. Well, what if we had 3 cookies? We might pretend that the chips are cookies. If we had 3 cookies, could we share them evenly between the two of us? You have one, and I have one, and you have one. Oh no, I don't have an extra cookie. You have more than me. That's not fair. That's not even. And so we talk about, well, then 3 is an odd number. So that's one way you can introduce evens and odds. But as we were doing this sort of in conjunction, we were talking about that evens go along with skip counting or counting by twos. As we talked about what are even numbers, and we talked about that even numbers are also when we count by twos. And so we practiced that on the board without adding the odd numbers into it. So we would say 1, 2, 1, 2. And we started doing that 1, 2 thing. And we started to see that we were making a pattern, and when you do 1, 2, oh, there I am again, and the pattern gets formed. And so they start to see that every time I'm counting by 2, well, lo and behold, they're always in the same column. And then we can even start talking about, well, another way to talk about that is skip counting. So you could say 1, skip 1, 2, skip 3, 4, skip 5, 6. So I kind of incorporate all of those concepts into one, and we talk about it for a good 3 or 4 days. So we also then fill out one with just the odd numbers. Oh, look, we're skipping again, and this time we are only going to talk about the odd numbers. And they go through the odd numbers, and then we put it together. Well, let's do odds are going to be red, evens, and you'd be amazed at how engaged a child can be. They'd fill up the whole board. They're so excited. And then you can do some fun things where once you have them all on, imagine my whole board is filled, and I might say, okay, I might have this one open. I say, okay, what number doesn't have a chip? And so he will say, well, that's 2. So this is another great opportunity for you to make sure that they know their numbers 1 through 100. You're asking them. So this little check, okay, oh great, you're right. The number 2 is missing a chip. Well, what do you think? Is 2 an even or an odd number? And right away they have all the visual clues, because remember, this is all filled in. Your chips are completely covering the board. And so they can really quickly say, oh, well, 2 is even. So you play this game really the whole day. And if I'm doing something like this, I'm not necessarily going to do the worksheet that was in my curriculum that day. We're just going to be focusing with these hands-on materials. I never want you to feel like you have to do all of this and the worksheet, because that's a lot for a little kiddo. And especially if you're spending 30 minutes one-on-one doing some math games, even 15 minutes, that can be a lot for their little minds. And so adding doing all this counting and even and odds and then adding a worksheet onto it might just be a little bit too much. So don't feel like you have to do exactly what your curriculum says that day. If you're meeting your objective, which is talking about counting by twos, and you've played your game for 15 minutes, you've met the objective. It doesn't have to mean that you also did the worksheet. So the last thing I want to talk about today are base 10 blocks. Now, I personally don't remember using these as a child. So when I got to school, when I was in college and learning about teaching math, that was my first experience with actually using them myself. And I was really amazed. And it was one of my favorite takeaways from learning how to teach math, and I used them all the time when I was teaching how to do adding and subtracting larger numbers with my second graders, and I taught the same skills to my children using base 10 blocks. I really think they're great. I think that if you've never seen them used, they can be a little bit like, okay, I don't exactly understand how to use these. So I'm hoping today to give you a little bit of a quick run through of how you can use base 10 blocks, not only to teach addition, but also some basic number sense. And I think it will be helpful to you. Let's dig in and see how you can use base 10 blocks. Okay, so when my kids are really little, or first grade, end of kindergarten, and we're talking about just what is a number. You can start by building the number on a daily basis here with a tens and a ones. The first activities for building number sense and understanding about place value is just simply building the number. So for a little person, maybe end of kindergarten, first grade, you can go ahead and start using these even if you're not working on adding with them yet. Just simply understanding that the numbers have place value. So we could say today's the 26th. So you might say, okay, let's build the number 26. We're going to say that 26 has 2 tens and 6 ones. And you might just do this every day for a while. And they're going to start to see the pattern. Oh, okay, well, every time when it's like a teen number, like 16, we have 1 10 and 6 ones. If it's the 6th of the month, well, that's what that looks like. Oh, it's the 9th. And then you could talk about, oh, well, here it is. It's the 10th today. But look, when you count them up, we have 10, and there's a place for 10. We can never have a number that's bigger than 9 in the one spot. So it's time to trade. And kids understand that concept of trading. Okay, let's take all of these and let's get one of the tens instead. And you can have them count them. You can have them make sure, oh, yep, this is exactly the same thing. We're getting an even trade. And you count up that 10 ones is exactly the same as one of these tens. And so you do that and you trade, and then you can say, okay, so today is the 10th and there's 1 10 and 0 ones. And after I've done that and I've talked about it in just this way with the actual manipulatives, you can start using the symbols. So it might look like something like this. The 10th is 1 10 and 0 ones. That's what the number 10 is. And so it's nice to do this maybe on a whiteboard, or if you have something laminated that you can just wipe off every day, that works too. Or if you're just going to write it on their paper, you can do something like this. So just practicing building the numbers first is a great step. Then we start talking about, well, how does this look if we're going to add something? And back when I was in school, we called it borrowing and carrying. Now I think a lot of times it's called renaming and regrouping. It might even be called something else now, but that's what I usually use the word regrouping with my kids, or renaming. So we regrouped those 10 ones and turned it into 1 10. So when I'm teaching how to add something, let's talk about, let's just ignore this. We'll just cross it out. 2 tens and let's say 3 ones. And at the beginning, I don't necessarily go ahead and write the number 23. We're just working with the numbers. And let's say we're going to add 9 to that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I have 9 and 3. Well, when I add those up, I have more than 9, because remember 9 is the most that we can have in this ones group. So can we trade it? Can we rename it or regroup it? Let's see if we can make 10. So then they would count out 10. Okay, 10 is gone. Well, look, we can put this here instead. And now we have 3 10s and 2 1s left over. And so you're just going to keep making numbers without any symbols, maybe just for a day or so, just practicing that, switching out, making the trades, renaming or regrouping, okay? So let's try it again. Let's say you had a problem, 32 plus 25. And sometimes it's just, you're not going to be doing regrouping when you're first introducing. And you could go ahead and write on the paper, this is the number 32 plus 23. I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, and then let's say, okay, let's add everything in the ones. I have a 2 and I have 3. Well, 2 plus 3 is 5. And look, that's how many are in the ones column still. Now let's add up our 10s. We have 3 10s, 1, 2, 3, and we have 2. And now we have 3 and 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the answer to 32 plus 23 is 55. And so a lot of times I would just be writing it right here in the board that we're working on, the problem. Now if we're going to add some regrouping to it, I'm just going to cross this problem out. Let's do 55 plus 6. Okay. And so you could just build it, but then after you've been doing that for a while, you are going to go ahead and add the symbols. So you'll write out the problem, and I probably would write it up higher if I was using a board. So 55, that's what I started with. That's the 55 plus 6. We added 6 ones. And then let's go ahead and add it up. We have our 5, we have our 6, you have them counted out. Oh, well that's 11, that is more than 9. And remember the rule is we cannot have a number that's bigger than 9 over here in the ones. Let's go ahead and rename it. Let's group it out and let's make a 10. So they'll go ahead and count it out, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Okay, they get one of these instead, so these are gone. We've added a new one. And then you have, actually I'll put it up here at the top. And then you have the one over here. So there's 1 left over. You've put a new one up here in the 10s. You've added a new 10 rod. And now let's count how many there are. There was 5 that you had, plus the new one is 6. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 61. So I hope that makes sense how you're going to use these blocks to teach renaming, regrouping. There's a really fun game that you can play with dice that my kids always loved. And you can also use a board like this if you don't want to use the words 10s and 1s. Sometimes you can use something where there's a picture of the hundreds, the 10s, and the 1s. So this one is called Race to Hundreds. So after you've talked about 10s and 1s, you can also talk about hundreds. So I've got my hundreds and I have my 10 pieces. And so the goal is in Race to 100 is that we're trying to get to this. And so kids are just playing with dice and you're going to be playing against them. Whoever gets to 100 first wins. So they just keep rolling the dice, 1, and then it's mom's turn, and I'm also going to have a board. Or if you have a sibling that's kind of on the same, close to the same age, 5. And so what you're doing is just practicing, manipulating that. So your child has got 6. So you're still fine. You haven't gotten out of the 1s yet. So they're at 7. Okay, my turn. I got 6. Okay, well, I think this is going to put me over 9. I have 6 and I already had 5. So when I add them together, have 11. So it's time to go ahead and rename these or regroup this. Let's count out 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They're gone. We're going to go ahead and get our 10 rod out instead. So we've traded, and now we have 11. And we're just going to keep doing that. This kiddo goes in 5, and it goes on and on. Once you get, obviously you get your 10 tens, then you're going to go ahead and you'll be the winner because you got the 100. So that's a great way to kind of show that you can't have more than 9 ones, you can't have more than 9 tens, and then it's time to move on to the next block. I hope that made a little bit of sense to you. I love using these. I think you might have to take a little bit of time, step away from your curriculum to play some of these games and make it a little more concrete, but I think it's worth your time, and your child will be pretty engaged with these games. And I think if you're using them just to build numbers also from a very early age, say kindergarten, first grade, practicing building the date every day, that's also a nice way for them to learn place value. All right, thank you so much for joining me today talking about math manipulatives. I love talking about math. If you ever have any questions, please feel free to email me at jen@jenmerkling.com. Visit my website, jenmerkling.com. I'd love to have you there. There's some more information about math and teaching math. And I hope you have a great time homeschooling your children. It's been a huge blessing in my life. Math is always one of my favorite times with my kids because it just feels like we're playing games. Enjoy that time with your little ones. Thanks so much. Bye.